You can use Haiku LMS to set up exams and tests for your students. Here's how you do that. I'm logged into the class Around the World in 80 Days as the teacher Jane Doe. To create an assessment, I start by going to the Assess tab. Click on the tab name itself, Assess. And I can see on the assessments page that there are 3 different types of assessments. There are drafts, which are assessments that I've created that aren't actually available to my students. There are published assessments, which are the ones my students have access to. And there are imports, which are questions I brought in from other programs like Respondus, StudyMate, ExamView. And there are other tutorials that show you how to import those questions. For this particular tutorial, we're going to create an exam from scratch. So to do that, I click the Add Assessment button, and Haiku is going to step me through this creation process. So the first thing I need to do is decide what type of an assessment I want to create. Is it an exam, which will grade students and provide feedback after they submit the results, or is it a practice just meant as exercise? I'm going to go ahead and make it an exam, and so I will click the next button. And on the second step, I need to give my exam a title. So in this case, I'm going to make this the Unit 2 test. And in the description box, I can add some information about the test. Further down in the window, I have other options. By default, Haiku is going to create a gradebook entry for me. I want this test to be worth 50 points instead of 100. So 50 is what the gradebook will record. It's not an extra credit assignment, so I'm going to leave this box unchecked. I've set up categories in my gradebook, so I have an option to record this entry in one of those different categories. I will leave it in tests since this is an exam. Next, I can organize what's in this exam. And organize simply means a way for me to tell my Haiku account, so all the classes I have in Haiku, what's involved in this exam. And if I click on this small question mark to the right of organize, Haiku reminds me what this actually does, because this may or may not be something that you use often. So this particular exam, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at grade level 12. It's going to be an upper level exam. The subject is going to be social studies, and I may also throw in some other questions too, different topics. And then I can add tags. And again, if I click this small question mark, Haiku tells me what this actually means. So it's just a way for me to add information about this particular exam. So I'll just call it Unit 2, for example. Now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is setting up the parameters for my students. I can make it a time test so that students have to answer the questions within a certain number of minutes. So let's say I will give them 30 minutes. And I can also enable students to take the exam more than once if I'd like, up to 5 times. And I'll go ahead and let them take it 3 times. But they're only able to submit their final answers once. I also have 2 other optional settings. I can set the questions to randomize, or I can set the answers within the multiple choice questions to randomize. And I don't want to do either of those things right now, so I'm done, and I click the Finish button. Now that I've set up the shell for the exam, I'm ready to start adding questions and grouping them into sections. I have to have at least one section, which my Haiku class gives me by default, and I'll go ahead and rename that before we get started adding questions. So to change the title, I click the edit icon on the right side of the screen. And in the small window that loads, I can change the title and add a description. So I'm going to group my test by question type. So I'm going to start with multiple choice. And you can group your questions any way you'd like. This is just for demonstration purposes. I can also include a description to include above the questions. I'm ready to move on, so I click the Save button. I'll go ahead and create a couple other sections so that we can see how it looks like in the end. So to make a new section, I click the Add Section button, and the same process we just saw. So I'll do true, false. I'm done, so I click the Finish button. And I can see the 2 separate sections here. And now I'll go ahead and start adding questions. So to do that, I click the Add Questions button in the upper left. And in the small box that pops up, I have lots of different choices. So if I'm creating a question from scratch, I need to first select what type. So the options are short answer, essay, fill in the blank, matching, multiple choice, true, false, or note flight activity if I'm using the note flight musical editor. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start with multiple choice. So I clicked that. And in the field labeled question, in this new window, I simply need to type my question. Question. Again, if I'm using Note Flight, I have the option to add a musical score here. If I wasn't using Note Flight, that would not display. And then I need to enter at least 2 possible answers for the question. So my question being, which of the below interstates runs north-south, I'm going to enter some options for that. So say 80, 90, 74, and 55. Now I have the choices included, but now I need to indicate which is the actual right answer. And that is, of course, Interstate 55. So I select the radio button, or the small circle that's to the left of the correct answer. Now if you notice, when I click the radio button, the text over here changed from hint to kudos. Now if I click kudos, I get a small window so I can enter a message to the student if they get the question correct. So something like, yes, good work. If they got the question incorrect, I can do the same thing with the hint. So I'll choose hint, and if the answer here is 74, I will say something like no, try again, or you could give them some type of a clue that would indicate that the correct answer would be 55, but that's up to you. Click the save button, and I can see from the shading of these different texts that there are hints or kudos because they're just a slightly different color. The gray indicates that those are blank. I'll just do those 2 for now. If I wanted to add more answers, I could do that by clicking the Add Choice Answer button. Again, I won't just for the sake of time. And now I need to select which section of my exam I want this question to be in. So again, I'm organizing my test by question type. My first option here is multiple choice. That's the correct one, so I'll leave that selected. And I can also select how much weight this question has. So I'm going to make this question worth, let's say, 2 points. And also, again, as we'd seen before, I could organize this with the same options I had earlier. So the grade level, the subject, and the tag. I'll go ahead and leave those as they are. And if I'm done, I can click the Finish button. Or if I'm done with just this question and want to add another, I can do that as well. So I'll go ahead and finish and add another. And Haiku assumes that I want to add another of the same type of question. So again, it's a new multiple choice. I don't actually want to do another multiple choice right now though, so I'm going to click the cancel button. And I'm back on my main page, which still lists the 2 sections, multiple choice and true false. And now I can see the question I just created is displaying in the multiple choice section, and the correct answer is indicated with the green check mark. I could edit this question by going over to the edit icon here. I click on that. I get the same screen that we just saw, and I can change the answers here. I don't need to change anything, so I'll click cancel. And I can also change the weight by clicking weight, and I could change that here just right in line, and I'll go ahead and make that 3 just so we can see it. And then click the save button. Or to remove the question entirely, I can click the delete button. And if I click that, Haiku is going to prompt me to confirm that I really want to delete it. And I do not, so I'm going to click cancel. Now, anytime I create a question in a Haiku class, it adds that question to my question library. And that means I can use that question for any of the assessments that I create in any of my Haiku classes. So to get to the question pool, again, I go to Add Question, and click that button. And back on this familiar screen, instead of New Question, I want to go to Existing Questions. And I want to choose my question library. So I've clicked that. And now the small window closes, but the page behind it reloads, and I'm actually on my question library. On the left side of the screen, I have different ways that I can find questions. So the different classes that I have in Haiku are American Literature, Around the World in 80 Days, and Geography. So if I wanted to see, for example, the questions I had in American Literature, I would just click on that. And the page reloads and shows me in the right-hand column the questions that I have within that particular class. Now by default, it's showing me only the questions that are in published exams. So again, those are the questions that students can already see and answer. So if I want to see what else is there, I can click the Include Draft Questions box. I'll go ahead and do that. And the page again reloads, and it shows me that there are still only the two, so that means I don't have any actual draft questions. If I want to return and look at the full class list again, right now I can see current filters is American Literature, just means that that's all I'm looking at. So to remove that, I click the small X here, and now I can see I can filter by other classes or question types again. I have a couple different multiple choice questions that I'd like to bring in just as an example. So I'm this time going to filter by the type of multiple choice. And the page reloads and shows me all of the multiple choice questions that I have in all of my classes. And it's because I've selected Include Draft Questions, it's already including those. So I'm just going to pick the top 3 for an example. And I want to add them to my current exam, so I have selected those, and then I click Add Selection to Assessment. So I'll click that button, and Haiku is asking me if I want to insert all of the questions that I've selected, or if I just want to insert a certain number of random. In this case, I want all 3 of those questions in my new exam, so I'm going to choose that. And I click Insert. And now I am back on my exam, and I'm out of my question library, and I can see in the multiple choice section now, there are 4 questions, including 3 that I just brought in from my library. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to add questions, choose from question library, and now I'm going to again choose multiple choice, but this time I'm going to select the remaining 3, click Add Selection to Assessment, and instead of inserting all 3 of these questions, I only want to choose 1, but I don't care which one. So I'm going to set this to insert 1 question, then Haiku will select which question to display to the student. So I click Insert, and again I go back to my Haiku class, and this time Haiku has chosen for me the 1 question. I'm going to bring in a couple more questions just quickly so we have some more information to work with. So I'll go back to my question library. This time I'm going to grab some true-false questions. Let's filter that. And for efficiency, I'll just grab the first 3 again. Add those to my exam. I'll add all of them. And back on my exam, if I scroll down the page, I should have 4 multiple choice and 3 true-false. And when I grab those true-false, I did not select the right section. I can see that there are 3 true-false questions at the tail end of the multiple choice section. So I'm going to move those into the true-false section by dragging and dropping. So dragging and dropping is just I click on the green bar, holding down my left mouse button, I move the question into the space below true-false, and I let the mouse button go, and the question drops into the correct spot. Again, it's just clicking, dragging, dropping, clicking, dragging, dropping. And the same holds true if I'd like to change the order for any of the questions. So clicking and dragging reorders those. I can do the same thing with the sections, but first I need to set it to reorder. So click the Organize Sections button, and now we're looking at only those 2 sections. So click, drag, drop. And when I'm finished with that, go ahead and click the Organize Sections again, and again I can see those questions. If I want to see what this exam is going to look like for my students, I can preview it by going to Manage Assessment and choosing Preview. And I can see the description that I'd entered a few minutes ago. So this test covers the material from Unit 2. And I, because I'm the teacher, get a special note about this exam being a draft and that it's only visible to me because I'm the teacher of the class. Shows me the time limit, point value, how many times a student can take the test. It also shows a key for students. They'll get a check mark when they finished a question, or they can also flag it, which we'll see in a minute, if they're not ready to answer a question. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window for now. And since this is a draft, it's not actually visible to my students yet. So I'd like to go ahead and do that by choosing Manage Assessment and Publish. And when I publish it, I can set it up so students can take it anytime, or I can set it up so that they can only take it within a certain date range. So from one day to the next. I'll go ahead and leave it with any time. Again, it has a gradebook entry. It's just showing me that as a reminder. And then I can also choose which page to place the exam on. In this case, I think I want to put it on the home page, the main page, which is called Maps of the World. And it will show up in a block. I'll set it at the top of the left-hand column. And now I will click the Finish button. And let's flip to a student view of the page to see what it looks like for them. So here on the page Maps of the World, I'm logged in as a student. I can see Unit 1 test, the description my teacher entered, and it's open with no set test date. So let's go ahead and take this exam quick. So I click that link, and this familiar screen opens in the new window. Again, it shows me my time limit, point value, how many times I can take it, and I am ready to start the exam, so I'll go ahead and click Start Exam. So we'll just answer these real quick. Columbus did not sail in 1992. To answer the question, student clicks OK. Colorado is west. It's true. The capital of Turkey is Istanbul. If the student doesn't know this, instead of clicking OK, they can flag a question to come back later. And that makes a small flag display on the right-hand side of the screen. Multiple choice. Answer. Capital Chicago. Choose Shelbyville. It's not fair when I already know the answers, I guess. When the student clicks I'm finished, if they have flagged a question, Haiku will tell them that there are flagged questions and ask if they are finished with the quiz and ready to submit. Then if they select cancel, they can go back to the question, click on it, and answer it. So again, they're finished. You can see in the upper right-hand corner that there is a timer. The student's finished. And again, Haiku asks, are you finished and ready to submit? And click OK. Now the student has the option to view their attempt and how they did. If they click on Attempt, because the student can take this particular exam 2 more times, remember they have 3 attempts for the exam, if they review the answers, they cannot take the exam anymore. So if they thought they didn't do very well, at this point they would want to choose Cancel, go back and take the test again. I'm ready to see how I did. I'm not going to take the test again, so I go ahead and click the OK button. And now as a student, I can see how I did. I got 45 out of 50, which I had seen on the previous screen. But on this page, I actually get the detail. So I can see I got this one right, first 3 are right. Then I get down to multiple choice, and I missed the capital of Illinois. It's not Shelbyville, it's Springfield. That's the one question I missed. So if I want to, I can go back and view all attempts. Another thing to point out is that the kudos or hints are displayed above the answers. So if I want to go back, and let's go ahead and close this window. And those are the basics of creating an assessment in Haiku LMS.